So big thanks to all our sponsors. We couldn't do this tour without our sponsors, so they're all on the screen here, but thank you to them. And like Mo mentioned, big thanks to all our scouts. We're gonna have over 500 counts done between corn and soybeans, and without that, there's no way I can crunch numbers and come up with a yield without that data from the field, so big shout out to them. You know, we're gonna talk a little bit about heat units. We actually are above the normals. We're not quite as hot as last year in July, but in the east, you know, we actually had a lot of heat early, much more than last year. And you know, we did see that in the crop last year when we were here. I think there was one field in eastern Ontario that I saw a dent. This year we actually saw half milk line on tour in some areas, Prescott Russell. So we were pretty, you know, we're in a lot better shape on most of the crop, but I will say there is as much crop that does need a lot of time to finish yet too. We did see white corn out this way, and that's going to need right into October. The West, we've actually been hotter than you guys. We've had a really warm year, which has been really beneficial, and we're seeing that too. The only thing we have probably more so in the West than we've seen in the East was we had a really tough planting season. I mean, it wasn't perfect up here by any means, but there's a significant portion of the crop that went in mid-June in the Southwest. So it was tasseling actually last week. So we had some counts of corn that still hadn't fully pollinated. So there's a little bit of, there's definitely some guessing still to be done on that crop, but a lot of the crop was in pretty good shape. Rainfall, the east is way above normal and above last year. So we have had a lot of rain. Rain makes grain. This year it's gonna make grain in soybeans, and it'll make a good corn crop, but not quite as good of a corn crop as we've seen. The West, you know, I think this is kind of a tough, but what we see is we actually are saying we had less rain in July. It's definitely, this season has been really sporadic rain, so there are farms that have got way more rain this year in all the months than they did last year. But as a whole, the East actually had more rain in July last year than it did this year. But I think what really hurt the crop is how much rain we got in June, when that corn was actually, you know, starting to, you know, begin making yield. I think we got too much rain, and we're gonna see that in the corn number. So here's just a bunch of pictures from the tour, right? Really big bean yields. This is the first time, you know, when I go through the data, I've seen a pile of 90s. Our bean estimates are difficult because we're just counting pods. That's what we're doing, counting population and pods. The population does not change much. You know, Sean talked about that. Beans are beans. They kind of just round out, and we see the number is very similar every year. But we've seen really high pod counts and really good yield potential, right? You know, Halden and Norfolk, this is traditionally not a high yielding county. You know, we're coming in at 85. Those are some honking numbers. You know, there were some good numbers from the East, 90s too. You know, this is just a bit of what the Southwest was dealing with. These are edible beans, but yeah, they got a lot of rain in Elgin, Middlesex, you know, those counties, Lambton. You can see these beans, Tile Rundle early. So there is definitely a lot of hurting crop this year. It's gonna be difficult to quantify how much did we lose from all those rains, right? Good corn, just a touch of white mold out there, but I did say to everyone on, you know, who came through my group earlier, the white mold is definitely not as bad on a whole as last year. Last year in the Southwest and the East, we saw mold everywhere. We've just seen a bit of mold on tour, nothing too detrimental overall. You know, big yields, but not those big. We saw a lot of 260s, 280s last year on tour, and we're not getting that. We didn't get the kernel rows round in length that we had last year. We're actually up a little bit on average on population per acre, but I think the one thing we can include in that is how do you measure, you know, those holes in some of those fields that have got 8 inches of rain in a week or whatever it may be. You know, here's some of the Southwest, you know, this field here on the bottom, you can just see how yellow that is. That's June planted corn. That's actually August 1st picture, but you know, that's got a tough row to hoe to maximize yield potential, and you can see the up and down yellow corn. Seen quite a bit of yellow corn on tour as well, so we're running out of nitrogen in those fields that were all up front. And you know, that's probably gonna weigh down on our kernel weight at the end of the day. You know, here's Elgin County, this is on tour, right? We can see not we're not even pollinated. You know, that's, you know, we're estimating 207, that's great, but that's only 207 if everything goes right till October 20th, right? So, you know, there is a bit of guessing in the game here. SD&G, this was pretty good. You can see how, you know, advanced that corn crop is this year. Northumberland, Central Ontario, Middlesex again, bad county, not very mature corn. So we're calling Ontario 187 to 195 today, so we'll come in somewhere between there by Friday. Well, we actually come up with the number this weekend and then we'll release it on Thursday. And Ontario's bean crop, we're calling 50 to 55. It was like, those numbers seemed really high, but the East was exceptional. Last year we called the East a 56 and a 196, I think. So we're saying beans are better and corn's a little bit worse. We are pretty excited about the crop this year, and you know, Eastern Ontario did a heck of a job. We got a really good crop here. So yeah, thanks for coming out.